Hey guys, Frank here from Tithely, coming to you live with another episode of Modern Church Leader. Super excited about today's guest. We'll jump right in, but we're going to talk about all things like church creative, building experiences, what church online has looked like for a pretty big church out in Tennessee. So without further ado, let me bring in Callie Holland. Hey Callie, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you, Frank?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited about chatting today.
Yeah, me too. Hey, I think you need to show the world what you're wearing, Frank. I'm throwing you under the bus right now, right at the top.
We had this chat. I already have the Christmas jammies on, and we are doing all things from home. So, I got my normal top attire, but mommy.
Hey, business on the top, party on the bottom. It's great. It's great.
100%. So my wife went out and got the Christmas PJs for the whole crew, including her mom and her sister, who might be coming into town, might not be. I don't know. It's kind of like COVID. So,
yeah, but I love the commitment. I love it. I'm already behind. Usually my Christmas jammies get pulled out like December 26th because I forgot that I bought them. I was like, hey, let's wear them now. New Year's Eve pajamas now. All right. This is great.
I mean, they still work. They're quite, I'm in San Diego and I think it's like in the 60s. So it's getting a little cold.
It's frigid.
And so
get your parka out, We
got to get out the winter gear over here. Well, and on your end, I hear Christmas started early too.
So I was telling Frank right before, so I put up our Christmas stuff last weekend and my husband refused to participate because he felt like it was like a dishonor to Thanksgiving that we were putting our tree up before Thursday. And so he just sat there and watched. He was like, I am protesting this and I will not be a part of what you're doing here.
Sip his coffee while he just looked at you.
Yes, just watch me struggle, sweating, putting the lights on. And
like, real tree or fake tree?
Oh, fake. Absolutely. Those things come pre-lit, Frank. Why would I? No, sir.
No. Like we're full on fake tree. Like we've done it once or twice where we have our fake tree, which is, all things awesome, but we'll go get a real tree because real trees are awesome and they smell great, right?
I don't know. Are they awesome, Frank? I don't know. I don't know that they are.
No, the smell is awesome.
Well, I can get you a candle. Look, just after this, give me your address. I will mail you a fir scented candle and you'll be set. You'll be fine.
Sure. Well, okay. So on Thanksgiving, tell me, what is Thanksgiving like in your house? Like, how are you guys doing it this year?
So it's going to be actually pretty normal because we both have pretty small families that we've just stayed in the same bubble. So we've been seeing them because they all live locally here to Knoxville with us. And so we don't really have a lot of outliers as far as family goes. My husband has some family in Texas, but we usually only see them at Christmas anyway. So Ryan and I have been together since like high school. So we've always done 2 Thanksgivings. So we do his parents at like noon and then my parents at like 4. So it's a big, we just need stretchy pants. That's all I can say.
That's a big day.
It's a big day.
With everybody in town, that seems awesome. My family, like both are not in San Diego. They're not too far, but we got to drive or fly, which made we tried to do, we would do Christmas and hit both families and it was a nightmare. So we had to
this is too much. Take a breath. Will you all gather all together? Are you all coming together on Thanksgiving?
I think her parents are going to come out. Normally we do a big Thanksgiving at her parents' house and there's, 20, 30, 40 people depending on the year, but we're not doing that. So we went all in and like, we're doing it at our house. It'll just be us and her parents. And we went and bought the entire Thanksgiving dinner from Whole Foods.
I'm so impressed. Like everything's already made or you all want, are we talking pre-made?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's all they Ziploc or like what's it called? Air seal. Like, and you just go get it, and so it's in the fridge downstairs, and you just.
Why do more people not know about this? I feel like we just got a new house, and so we're hosting. And I told Ryan's mom, I said, "Listen, I am up for hosting. I'm fine." But I will not cook. Like I will go to Cracker Barrel and pick something up, but I will not be responsible for this meal. So whatever you want to do with that, you do it.
Oh my goodness. Well, to everybody who's joining live and a ton of people will watch the recording, tell us, what your Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving/Christmas merged plans are. Would love to hear from you guys. And Callie, tell us, let's kind of jump in, like, tell us about your role. Tell us a little bit about the church you serve at, your background, those kind of things.
So I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is kind of like the eastern side of Tennessee, closer to the mountains. So you'll have Memphis on one side, Nashville in the middle, and then you have Knoxville as like the three big cities in Tennessee.
Okay. Is there a fight? Is there a fight like over which place is best?
I mean, I think we all know which place is best, right?
Okay.
I mean, Knoxville, we have the University of Tennessee. We've got the mountains in our backyard. We've got lakes. We've got all of it. So, but I also don't want to hype it up too much because a lot of people are moving here and I need that to slow down, right?
Yeah.
Like my cost of living is going to go up the more people who live here. So really, Knoxville is awful. You don't want to live here. Nothing good about it. I'm looking to move myself.
Yeah.
Right. But I've grown up in Knoxville. I've actually grown up at the church that I serve at, Sevier Heights. And I went on staff as an intern in college. I was 19 and went on staff with the college ministry. We have a really great college ministry just because we're a mile away from the University of Tennessee.
Yeah,
so I got to come on staff and work as an intern for several years. And then I was approached about coming into full-time ministry, which, I mean, I was more on the road to be like a Diane Sawyer. You know what I'm saying? Like I was trying to get to the news. Like I was trying to have like a talk show. I was in another direction. But God just kind of stopped me and was like, I want to use you here. I want you to do this. I have a big heart for the next generation and for creating spaces for people to take next steps to know Jesus. And so they brought me on with the walk full time. And then from there, I attribute it to just incredible leadership who looks at their staff and says, here's what you're gifted at. So we're going to position you to do it. And that's what they've been doing the past about 13 years that I've been able to be on staff. And we are a pretty big church. So I'm incredibly grateful for the resources that we have in building out different ministries and creating these spaces and environments for people to come to know Jesus and step into an eternity. That's been the highlight of my job, is watching baptisms. I still get emotional every time because it never gets old to me to watch people make this decision. So a lot of that looks like website, socials. It looks like planning the services and the gatherings out. It looks like our online platforms and anything that's written in our storytelling, all that kind of stuff. A team, we all kind of work together on that and push it out.
Yeah. Amazing. So I want to get into your role a little bit, but how do you guys celebrate baptisms at the church there?
Okay.
And what do you do like to help, from your role's perspective, like how do you help tell those stories and make them a big event?
So the big deal for us is we talk about next steps. That's our phrasing that we use a lot, is that phrase next steps, that everyone has a next step to take. And we're going to meet you where you are and help you talk about what that next step could be. And obviously one of the biggest ones is baptism. And when I was an intern with The Walk, that was a huge deal for us, was always baptism. So I think that's where it started with me. But what we do is when people want to take these next steps, we obviously have conversations with them. And then when they go to get baptized, we always try to capture it, whether I position photographers all around it, position our video team all around it, because I want them to be able to create content, exciting content. And I want you to be able to hear the audio of people cheering and screaming for them. I want you to see the expression of these people coming out of the water and just the joy on their faces and the joy of their family and the joy of our staff. Like, I want people to experience all of that so they see that this is a big deal. And then we take their stories and we either tell it on social media. A lot of times it'll depend on the details of the story, of what platform. Is it like a Sunday morning church experience story, or is it a let's let it live on social media kind of story? But telling these stories, whether it's a college student or a mom or a single, or we baptized a 50-something-year-old lawyer during the pandemic and his story. These stories are the goal always, Frank, is I want people who are sitting in that chair to be like, oh, that's me. Like that, what they're saying is me too.
Right.
And then they can see, oh, they took a next step. Like I can do that too. It kind of gives a little bit of courage. It gives a little bit of, I'm seen, so I want to do the same thing and have that same feeling and emotion. So that was probably a long explanation, but I get very excited about it, Frank.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, you mentioned it. I was just like, that's cool. And you see, churches of all shapes and sizes doing different things, right, with what they celebrate and how they highlight. So you see some churches that do cool things around like telling those stories, sharing that moment, and kind of you could be there in person and experience it,
Mm-hmm.
but then kind of taking that for those that can't be there in person and sharing it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, more broadly,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really,
Yeah.
so tell us about your role. Like, how did you find I don't know, this kind of passion? And, you know, so your title's Director of Creative Services. And I guess I'm specifically wanting to dig into your role a little bit, because most churches don't have this role. They don't have somebody who thinks about communications and marketing and creative and storytelling and all those kind of things. Like, so I'd love to just highlight kind of how it got created and why it's important and what kind of things you do day to day.
Yeah. Well, this is probably about 3 years in the making. And the only reason I know it was 3 years is I was pregnant with my youngest, Hagen. And I went and met with a guy who I started following when I came into ministry, because he just had really great out of the box ideas on how ministry should work and what we should be doing. And his name's Stephen Brewster, and he is one of the first like creative directors, like one of the first who actually held that role.
Right.
And so I went and met with him, and I was like, I just have this vision for this department. Like, I think every church should have this department for the very reason that you're saying. Is because if it hasn't been made more clear this year and with the next generation, online and how we are reaching people online, it's no longer an in-person experience for a lot of people. It's an online experience at this point. And we have people who are gifted in teaching, incredibly gifted in teaching. We have people who are gifted in leading worship. And that by themselves, if we can create the space for them to lean into just that, and then you give this environment building, whether it's in-person gatherings or online, if you give that to a team of people who already understand how it works, who already understand the passion and the vision of the church, and just are constantly coming up with new ways to present it and promote it and create it. I mean, that is where I've seen and know that growth happens, is when you have dedicated people to this, because it frees up the pastors to pastor. It frees up these worship leaders to lead. It frees up everyone to do specifically what they're created to do without the pressure of something that maybe they don't even really like doing, you know?
Right.
But then God's gifted some of us to be super excited about it. Me, overwhelmingly, annoyingly so at times. But being able to build this team, I remember I met with Stephen Brewster, and I was like, hey, here's what I want to do. And he was like, here's how you do it. And he drew it out, and he was like, here's a team. Here's how I would pitch it to your leadership. Here's how I would explain it. Did all these graphs for me. And I took all of it back and I pitched it, and it didn't happen. And I was like, all right, God, you made it very clear that we needed this, but it's not happening. And truly what happened was we got to this pandemic, and we all felt like we need to do something, but we don't know what it is. And all of a sudden this team was able to come up and be like, well, we should do this. And then we could do this, and we could try this. And all of a sudden they were like, this needs to exist full time. This isn't just a every now and again kind of thing. This, especially with social media alone, Frank, like, the content is king. You hear that all the time. You need someone dedicated to creating the content. I can speak to that because I ran social media as a piece of my job for a long time, and it didn't get the attention it needed because creating content's a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
So
like
being able to
point, it's one thing just to throw it on Instagram, but it's also a thing to actually create the content that should go there and make sure it's great and meaningful. And
the planning, the strategy, the connection, the engagement. And so it took the pandemic, I think, that leadership kind of looked at it and was like, we need this. Like, this is something we need. So this is like a new department that we are still building and developing right now. But that's when they looked to me and they were like, we think you're the person to do it. And I was like, I don't know, but I can try. We'll see what happens. I don't know, like, so that's kind of where it came from.
You are the person. That's awesome. But I think it's interesting because, you're a larger church, but it took the pandemic to kind of like raise the level of importance and almost like force the hand of the church and the leadership to like lean into doing this well and putting more resource behind it and thinking about it as like strategically important for the church, right? But I feel like every church on the planet has had a little bit of that happen to them. Like everybody was forced to figure out, at least some of this, like some of what you're talking about and what your role includes, but like going to church online and using, social media and other digital platforms well to deliver
Mhm.
the church experience and for both your members and your current kind of folks, but also the world around you and your community.
Mhm.
Everybody had to go figure it out.
Mhm.
And you guys are maybe at a different level as a church, but still we're at that same moment of like, this made it more important than maybe it ever was.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's what was really interesting is I think our leadership always believed in the importance of it. Like, hey, we need this. We need to grow this. We need to develop it. But I think it just took the timing of this was an easy thing. Anytime you create a new department with hires, obviously it has to, for us and our protocols, it has to go through like a church conference. It has to go through all these steps. And this was the best time to present it and be like, I mean, no one could really argue it. Like this has to exist. I mean, right? Like there wasn't going to be any pushback at this point because I was reading an article the other day, Frank, and it said that 41% of Gen Zers and 42% or 46% of millennials all said they were not going to come back to in person, even when COVID was over.
Wow.
So that means over 50% of the next generation is only going to engage with you online, whether it's through your streaming or through your socials or whatever content you're pushing out.
Right.
And so that puts even more, like if we are building the church for the next generation and making sure they're a part of it, we have to create a space for them there. We have to make sure that they're seen because that is the future of the church. Right. So it was just one of those things. I think leadership was like, we've always wanted this. I thought it was a good idea. Now it's the easiest time to be like, we are doing it. Here it is.
Right. And so what does the team look like? What is formed and what are the roles on the team? What do the people do? Like talk through that.
So I'll start with the base, which is our creative coordinator. So we basically outsource all of our design. We just kind of built a team of graphic designers, people that we know understand our vision and who we love the look of what they do and who get it right 95% of the time for us in a quick turnaround time. Yep. So she basically lives in our software that people put in requests for. So every ministry has access to us. We partner with every single ministry in the church to make sure whatever they're working on not only meets our standards, but also is what they want it to be, is, excellent and better than they can imagine is our goal. Yeah. And so we come alongside these ministries. They put in these requests, like, here's everything we want. Here's what we're thinking about doing. We meet with them, create a plan. And then this creative coordinator, she executes the plan. So she takes that plan and she's contacting all of our vendors. She contacts our designers. She is the communication piece between what the ministry wants and the people who are going to actually create it. Right. And so she plays that role, which is a huge role because it just requires so much organization.
So, but just to, you guys outsource to contract designers, freelancers, but you kind of have your like curated, like, here's the 3 that we love doing work with. And they're just, are they all local?
No, they're all over. I mean, we have one in Nashville. We have one in Atlanta. We actually have one over in London, but we only use him for big projects. And then we have one local here. Okay. Cool. But I guess that idea formed early in the pandemic. Just this year, I thought we have so much content we want created that I can't lay it all on one designer. And we already didn't have an in-house designer. And so I just started digging around and looking for designers and giving them projects to try out, and then slowly built this team. So like students and college, they have a designer who's just super trendy, like ahead of the trends, like just really cooler than I am by far. And so I send all of their stuff to him. And he takes care of it, and he hits the mark with them almost every time. And then for our church-wide stuff, we have a girl who she's actually on staff with University of Tennessee Athletics and runs their design, but she does our stuff on the side. And she's like clean and just pretty and eye-catching, but not over the top trendy because our demographic is all over the place. So we can't be too cool because it's almost a turnoff, but you can't be too old because, again, you're missing the mark on the other side. Right. And then we have one that does like our socials and our like slides and our like in between Sundays kind of stuff that we need covered.
Very cool. That's so smart. I love that way of thinking. Like, I don't need to have the whole staff. I don't need 5 designers on staff. I can outsource this, but have some like trusted, partners that do this really well.
All we did was build a style guide. So here's all of our logos. Here's how we use our logos. Here are the colors and the fonts that we like. And everything else. And we just sent that out. So the designers have that to work off of, which is really great. It kind of keeps things more cohesive than just willy-nilly. Everyone just send us something and let's see what works. So that's the creative coordinator. That's what she does. And then I have another one who is like a creative project manager in a sense, what sounds the same, but it's not. She is driving the look of all we do and all of our environments and the flow of things. Like where I pitched it this way, where I'm like the voice of Sevier Heights. Like I'm writing it all. I'm scripting stuff out. I'm the social captions, all that. She is the look of it. She's making sure that we look that trendy piece that I'm talking about and that she's keeping us in line, but she's also doing like our lobby elements. Like we just had a lobby element the past 3 weeks in preparation for our budget vote. And it was called a gratitude wall. And she took an idea where I said, I want to do something with like all the notes and letters people sent into us over the pandemic while we were doing all this mission work. And I want to do something with it. And she created just this incredible wall in the lobby off of it. And she's the one that's just creating these ideas of how things are going to look and how engaging they are and eye-catching they are, from video to graphics to in-room stuff. She's just kind of running and pushing all of that forward. And then the hire I was most excited about is our online coordinator. So he will run everything online. He's going to take over our social media. He'll take over our online platforms. He will take over website stuff. He will be dedicated to just almost, we're treating our online streaming as like a campus pretty much at this point. So he is dedicated to that, to growing that, to engaging with that, to making people feel seen. That is probably one thing that we for sure knew we needed probably about 2 months into the pandemic. We were like, we have to have this position.
Totally. No, that makes sense. And your team is responsible for not just the digital, but also the physical, like in the building. Does that include like stage setup and what shows up on screens, like sermon series, like graphics, and like any stories you create, all that kind of stuff that's happening in the sanctuary during church?
Yeah, we work really closely with our live production team. And so like we have Christmas coming up. So all of our meetings have consisted of like creative services and live production, piecing together, what is this going to look like? How are we going to pull this off? So they're like, hey, we're going to do an LED wall. So then we come in and say, what is the content that needs to be on the LED wall? Like, how are we pairing it with what's going on in the actual service? Yeah.
Very cool. So what is, like, maybe just rewind to the beginning of COVID, like how is church, what does church look like today? And what was your guys' progression from March till now?
I mean, it was chaos, right? Like back in March, we were all just like, oh, we're going online now. So
did you have online before? Were you online at all?
We did. We were already streaming online, but here's the deal, Frank. It was like 10% of our attention was going to online and 90% of our attention was going to in person, because online was basically just, if you were on vacation, you would watch it online, or if you wanted to send it to somebody. Like it just wasn't our main focus, because we wanted people with us. Like we're like, hey, it feels better. It just feels better if you're with us, right? And we're in this unique season where, like I said, we're building the foundation of a church because we have a new senior pastor. This is our first year where we can run. And so all of our attention in January, February, all the way up to this point, 90% of our attention was to in-person experiences. And so March hits, and I remember sitting in a room with a lead team, and they're like, hey, if we choose to do this, what has to happen? And I'm like, I don't, what? I mean, what do you mean? What has to happen? We're trying to create this communication plan. And so they said, we're going online. We decided on like a Thursday. Because everything was shutting down around Knoxville. And so our vision statement is shaping the way a city views church. So now we were like literally and figuratively shaping the way a city views church by the decision to be like the first big church in the area that says we're going online only. And also, how are we going to do that? And I think most churches outside of the big ones like Elevation or, Life Church, who made the whole online thing a thing. I think most churches were, how do we do this? Like, how do we 100%. Figure this out? Right? Like, we all were just kind of, okay, this is almost a guessing game. We're just going to keep throwing things and see if it sticks. And I was literally on the phone. My 5-year-old was having her first sleepover, and it was a Friday night. And I'm like coloring the hair of her best friend, like pink or something, like a mermaid, and on the phone with the team, like, okay, so we have to update this. Will you check this link? And then we need this graphic created, all while just like it was chaos. We were just figuring it out.
I hope you weren't doing this. I hope you had your AirPods in and you were doing
No,
it.
I had not. Listen, again with technology, I'm so grateful for a team. Also, my husband, who's like, here's an easier way to do this. Like, try this instead. But no, I was the old school, like holding the phone up by your shoulder for sure. That's what I was doing. But we started out with just a link that we would push out on socials, like, hey, watch here. And it was pre-recorded. There wasn't anything that was live. Yeah.
Did you push it? Was it just a video on your website? Did you put it on YouTube or Facebook, or what did you?
We started out with just a video on our website. So we would push that link out to everybody to watch online. And obviously we had streaming issues. We had like the site would almost crash because so many people were coming to it. Like there were all these bumps in the road that we just didn't see coming. But and then so we would push that out on social. And then on Sunday mornings, you would just find me like huddled in a corner with my phone, like, please engage with us. Please engage with, like, somebody take a picture, like texting my small group and friends, like, hey, take a picture and post it of where you're watching from to try to get it rolling. Like, I've never felt so desperate in my life. Like, anybody, please, somebody show me that you're watching. But our people got used to it and they started engaging with us. But what we realized was missing, Frank, was like that live aspect. There's something about knowing you're watching with your church at the same time. All together. And we started thinking we need a different way to do this. Like we want to be able to go live, but there's a huge risk with live worship, obviously. And so we were trying to figure out ways to push it out and it feel live, like you can engage with people. And so like many churches, we ended up looking into the church online platform that Life Church offers, which is it. We picked it because it has something called moments on it. So we picked it over YouTube and Facebook initially because you can take your verbiage. So ours is next steps. And we can drop in these moments of next steps in the chat. So we scheduled hosts to be in the chat, talking and engaging with our people, letting them know that you're seen. We still know you're watching with us. We still know that you're out there and you want that connection. So our host would engage with them. And then we would drop in these moments like, hey, take next steps. Here's a number. We can take you into this private chat right here. It offered all of those things that we couldn't get via YouTube or Facebook. Now, at this point, we know stream everywhere, like stream anywhere you can, and people will come along with you. But that was a big decision for us. And that's one thing that we kept when we started meeting in person again. So we started meeting in person again, probably in September.
Okay.
Back in the building. We came all back together. Things were reopening, right? And so we're like, okay, like we feel that we can safely do this. We put in all of our protocols. We put everything out there that we knew. We looked around at other churches. We looked around at a lot of local businesses and to see, okay, and what are you doing? But the driver for us, Frank, was that schools opened.
Right.
So we were just kind of like, if schools are open, how can we say, well, we're still not going to? It felt like that was contradicting a little bit.
Yeah.
So we opened.
Reclosing, just a side note, or what's the current?
I mean, as we sit here right now, it's the last day of school before Thanksgiving break. And my daughter started kindergarten this year. So her first year was this year. And there's, oh gosh, kindergarten and COVID. I was like, does she even know you can go to school without a mask? Like, does she know there was a time that and you could sit next to people, not one seat away at lunch? Like, but yeah, so I'm waiting. There's rumors right now that they're going to shut down schools between now and next semester. They're going to say, don't come back. University of Tennessee already made that decision. Yeah. They're saying students don't come back after Thanksgiving. And so again, it's funny because we had this conversation in a meeting I was in right before our conversation where they said, are we going to shut back down? And it will constantly be a question. But the thing is, like, if you need to, you need to. I think a lot of people won't do it because they think it looks bad to go back and forth. But our senior pastor said from the get-go, every plan we make is in pencil. Like, you all are you're going to have to work with us and roll with us because none of us know what we're doing right now.
That's a good way to put it too. Everything's
Yes.
successful because the eraser works. And
Yes. Mhm. Yeah. So we're back in person right now. We're still streaming to church online because probably 50% of our people are still watching online.
got it. So you're
Yeah.
getting half coming in the building, which
hmm
allows for social distancing and all the things.
hmm
You have
hmm
kids programs happening, and
We had the kids again because schools were functioning. So we thought, okay, we will open. Now we stagger open them. We'd open them and wait a second and see kind of what the fallout would be in terms of would it increase cases? What would our contact tracing look like? Because we still have to do that.
right.
So we created these teams were just incredible, and they just came up with all these plans of how we can make this happen. And so we reopened and everything opened. We stood up all the ministries
Okay.
by probably beginning of November. Everybody was back at it.
Wow, very cool. So now half are in the building, half are online. What do you like in terms of church online? What have you learned over the last 6 months, 8 months about how to do it well? Like, what's working for you guys?
Yeah.
Are you building that engagement versus, like, again, sitting on your phone and you're like,
please, 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 please.
looking at your husband and be like, honey, take a picture and post it online right now.
Why aren't you posting about this right now? Come on, post the Christmas tree. It looks great. So one of the early things that we figured out is our people were not used to engaging with us online, right? And every church culture is different. And I think it's really difficult when you look at these really successful big churches and you think that you're less than because yours doesn't look like that, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you look like an Elevation and you see Furtick up there, like in talking to the chat, like saying, drop it in the chat was his big thing, right? And you're like, oh, our people will do that. And you look at like Passion and you see the things they're pulling off. You just look at these big churches and you're like, well, our people aren't doing this. We must be doing something wrong. It's just the cultures are so different across all churches. And so initially we rolled out this church online platform, and I was prepared for this chat to like blow up. I was like, everyone's going to be so hungry for this. They are going to love it. They can't wait for it. And we get on there, and I mean, initially there was maybe a handful that engaged with us. Like we would ask questions and they would answer. A few of them would answer, but it was slow, right? And I thought, we must be doing this wrong. Like, what are we not doing?
Because you're thinking like, what, you had 4,000 or 5,000 or so in attendance on a normal weekend in the building. So surely there's going to be roughly that amount, maybe more. It's church online and more people can come easier. They, they slept in or their kids were crazy or whatever. They can still make it. It's easy.
Everybody's going to be here. Everybody's going to be here. But what's happened and what I figured out slowly, really truly through reopening, is that everyone's rhythms have changed now. Like we lost all of our routines back in March and April, and we created new routines, right? Because we find comfort in those routines. So we all created new ones. And if we weren't working to meet people in these new routines, like we couldn't keep doing it the way we were doing it, because it no longer fit their rhythm of life anymore. And so we had people who might be watching on Sunday morning, but a lot of them more so were watching maybe on Sunday afternoon, maybe Monday or Tuesday, like whenever they had a minute of quiet is when they were watching, not necessarily when it was actually live. And so that was kind of hard to figure out and swallow, that everyone has these new rhythms. And so how do we meet them in those instead of forcing what we want to happen into it? And it's a futile fight. Like we're not going to get anywhere doing that. So it kind of stopped being about why aren't they coming back and why aren't they engaging, and more so like, how do we engage them? How do we meet them knowing they're not going to change? They still love us. They still care about us. I mean, we would still communicate with them. They just weren't doing it the way they had always done it. So how did we need to change was the big question.
Yeah. And what'd you do? What did you learn? What did you sort out?
Yeah. So here's what we figured out is people just wanted to be acknowledged. They might not be engaging with you, like dropping anything in the chat. They might not, but we still wanted them to know you're a part of this church. Like you are a part of what we're doing. You are still making a difference. You're still shifting eternities alongside us. And so we started, the host was a big piece. Like we now have scheduled hosts that are in that chat, and people might not always respond to them, but the people are still feeling seen. Another big thing.
Do you have a host like on camera, like
That
right?
was
Like,
our next step. Yeah. So
okay.
our first step was the host that is in the chat. And then our next step was these hosts that are engaging and bridging the gap between the online and in-person experience. So we kind of set them off away from the stage where you see the background of everyone coming in, because we still wanted to show, hey, like people are coming. Here's what it looks like. It's safer than it used to be, whatever. And so they engage with that online audience as well, and the people in the room. They're just really bridging that gap. And probably the hardest piece, Frank, was changing our verbiage for people on platform. So it no longer was like, hey, for all of you all in the room, or hey, if you're here with us this morning, go ahead and stand up and worship. It was addressing both audiences.
Right.
And it meant like looking dead into a camera sometimes,
Yeah.
which felt really weird, because you're like, but there are people for me to look at in here. So that was probably one of the hardest shifts for our people on platform, was you have to think for both audiences now, so that online audience feels like they are being recognized and seen, and a whole lot more social media activity. Like,
Okay.
if there's one thing I learned, especially social media wise, and I learned it really early on, if someone tags you or if someone's posting about you, the minute you repost that first one, other people who see it are like, oh wait, they'll post mine too. And so then all of a sudden everybody is posting, and we're tossing all of it up to create a little bit of momentum. Like, it's just making people feel seen is the biggest piece. Like, when they feel so unseen in this year or whatever, it's like, no, we see you. We're going to connect with you. We're going to make sure you know that we know you're there.
I love that. Yeah. Making people feel seen, like coming at it from that perspective of what I do online is all about making the folks on the other side of the camera feel seen, or the device that they may be listening on.
Yes. Yeah.
What did you guys do, or what are you doing, now versus pre-COVID in terms of social media? Like, how did that evolve? What are you doing that you feel like is really connecting with people?
So I'm really excited. We started asking and using specifically on Instagram stories, the like question feature a lot. And so we would ask people like, hey, how can we pray for you? Hey, do you like the vote feature, the poll? Like, do you like this or this? Thanksgiving or Christmas before Thanksgiving, Christmas after Thanksgiving. Like, it stopped being so much about come to this, know about this, like tell people about this, and more about like, hey, what are you doing? What do you think about this? And we got so much more investment because they felt like we were investing in them, if that makes sense. Like, we cared to ask them their opinion, and all of a sudden they were like, oh, I want to see what else they do, like what else they want to ask me about or whatever else. We were engaging in investing in them, and it made them want to invest in us. That was one of the biggest changes I think we've made.
It seems like simple interactions really help boost things too. Like,
and it just doesn't have to be the most complicated thing. And I think when this happened, Frank, we thought you had to have a millions of dollar budget to be able to keep up and be able to connect with your people. All you have to have is a phone. That's all you have to have, and you can connect with all your people. It's just being intentional with it, and it's simple things like asking them questions that don't even pertain always to the church.
Right. It doesn't always have to be super deep. In fact, probably 90% of the time, it shouldn't be all that deep.
Yes. Yeah. It's like our pastor taught about it this way when he was talking about, sharing your faith. But he was like, when the UPS man shows up, I don't immediately ask him, hey, what is your childhood trauma? Like, what did you go through? Like, I'm just like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, are you delivering a lot of stuff today or whatever? Like, I think we try to go from here to like here in way too short of amount of time. It's an investment in relationship. And when we do that, then they're way more invested in you too. And that's when they want to engage with you and tell people about you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, this has been awesome. One of your good friends, Caroline, who helped set this all up, put a question in that I should ask about one of your most stressful days during COVID. So
help me. Okay. This just happened. I'm not kidding. The past 2 Sundays.
Because I'm sure many people watching have all had very stressful days. Maybe it may have been the first day of going online. What's your most stressful COVID moment?
I would say my most stressful COVID moment just happened probably 2 weeks ago. So, the first wave of this, I didn't know a lot of people with it, right? Like, I knew it was a big deal. I knew it was happening and we were doing our part, but I didn't know a lot of people. And then the second wave that's coming through, I feel like I know everyone I know has tested positive at some point.
Is this the
And
second wave or the third wave? I don't even know.
I don't know, Frank.
So.
Listen, it's one constant wave. It's a tidal wave. All right. And it's just until the vaccine, we're all just going to just keep swimming. But last week, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from our senior pastor. He said, "Hey, my son tested positive. I'm quarantined for 2 weeks. I can't go anywhere." I was like, "Okay, that's okay. We have a team who can shoot you, will video you." So we brought him in. He could only go onto the stage. 2 of us were there at the back of the room shooting his message,
right,
doing everything. And we played it live in the services for 2 Sundays, right? Well, in between those 2 Sundays, last Wednesday morning, I get all these calls from our worship pastor, like over and over and over again. I'm like, what is happening? And so I call him back and he was like, my son has tested positive. I have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So now our senior pastor and our worship pastor are out. So I'm like, oh, we still have one worship pastor who leads one of our services. Like, we still have one. We're okay. We're okay. The next day he calls, "Hey, I tested positive for COVID this morning." He's out. And so because he tested positive, he ended up taking out the rest of our worship team because they all were in a meeting together.
Yeah, they all practice.
They were all in a meeting together. So they're out for 2 weeks. And so we're without our senior pastor. We're without all of our worship leaders. Luckily, we had some part-time worship leaders who come in just on Sundays to help lead.
Yeah.
And so we had we had 3 people who were able to be there who had never led like on their own by themselves.
Right.
And that was not yesterday, but the week before. And it also took out our production guy who like oversees all of production. It took out my whole team. And so I'm literally feeling like I'm the only one here. Like it's just me. Like we're trying to pull off these services and literally everyone is in quarantine. It wasn't a stressful day. It was a stressful week, but this Sunday, everybody's back. Praise the Lord. Everybody's back this Sunday, but it was a rough go at it. And I was like, we're going to start treating this like the president and vice president who like can't fly on the same plane, you know? Yeah. Like all of y'all are staying apart. None of you can be in a room for more than 13 minutes. Like we'll have a bell go off every 13 minutes and we'll all move to different locations.
Yeah.
And because it's just,
you're not allowed in rooms. You're just going to stay outside for all meetings.
Yes. Like
Zoom calls. Like it's
here we go. I know you're all tired of looking at yourself on screens, but we're going to look a little longer because I cannot, my heart, I think I'm going to say it took at least 5 years off my life these past 2 weeks. I can confidently say that.
Oh my goodness. That's pretty crazy. I'm with you though. Like over the 8 months, 9 months, increasingly you see like people that have it because at the beginning I knew nobody directly, but now I know people that have got it.
I feel like it's a phone call almost every day. That's like, "Hey, I tested positive," or and the quarantines and everything else. It's been so crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Well, let's wrap on this. What's been the most like exciting moment, most, I don't know, like victory, encouraging kind of situation that you've seen through all this?
Oh gosh, I've honestly seen so much. Like I know we were joking around about it before we started that everyone harps so hard on 2020 and they like blame the year itself for what's happened.
Going down in history. Yes.
I know. And it's like, hey, I can't wait for 2021. And like, hey, spoiler alert, this is still going to be happening. So we need to start finding joy now because this, like the new year isn't going to come and everything's back to normal. But I would say the best thing that I have seen is the way that people will acclimate and change what they're doing. Like our people have been incredible at coming along with us and changing and supporting and making sure that they're still supporting everything that we're doing. That's been huge, but specifically, like I said, we thrive off baptisms. But when we were on the online only, it's really hard to do baptisms, right? Like, we kept talking about, like, do we tell people to get in their bathtubs and just like dunk themselves or what do we
like, video themselves?
Yes. Like, how does this work? Because I'm not going to lie to you. We tried that concept on a couple of people who like messaged us to want to take next steps. And we're like, here's an option. All right. Go in your bathtub, fill it up. We will have a pastor on Zoom who will do all the steps along with you and you just dunk yourself and come back up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't really pick up what we were putting down, Frank. They didn't. But here's what's been incredible.
Weird.
When it's so weird, right? I wouldn't either. I'd be like, no, I don't think so. But when we came back just this past Sunday, we had 8 baptisms this past Sunday. And it has been incredible that the church does not, and this sounds so like you've heard it a million times already, right? Probably. The church does not have to be in a building to be the church. Like we have completely changed. I've heard it said this way, like the church stopped being about a building and the building started being, or we weren't about getting people into the building. We're about using the building for the people.
Right.
And so seeing that change and that God was still working in so many lives, like you still saw people be like texting in, hey, I want to be baptized. Or my dad told me, we had a guy who was in rehab and he was like, my dad called me and told me to watch this. Wow. And I watched it and I know that I need Jesus. I need a relationship with Jesus. And he was the first one we baptized when we came back in person.
That's awesome.
So just stories like that, like people were still responding. It did not require a building with like all the lights and all the like environmental stuff and all the haze. Like you didn't even need haze for people to make a decision. Like it was incredible learning that you need very little to still connect with people and help them take their next steps. That is my biggest takeaway, because we always think bigger is better, and all the bigger got taken away this year. And what we're left with is still working and people are still connecting, because Jesus is what matters. Jesus is what makes it happen, not anything else.
Amen. I love that. I love that. Well, Callie, this has been a super fun conversation. We went way long. I hope we didn't.
I'm so sorry.
No. I hope you didn't miss something because we took a long time. This is great. So I know.
I hope I didn't miss a phone call of another positive case.
Yeah,
we're
please.
Not having church.
Oh, God. Let's real quick, where can folks go to find all the things that you guys are up to, and maybe look at some of your socials and just how you're doing church online?
Yeah, meet us over at Sevier Heights on Instagram. It's probably our most active. And then you can find us at sevierheights.org. Every Sunday we go live at live.sevierheights.org. So lots of places to find us. We'd love to see you there. If you need anything, I love talking about this stuff. So anyone, feel free to reach out. I'm here for it anytime.
Love it. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks, guys, for joining us live. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Callie, it's been great. Have a great
Thanksgiving. You too. See ya.
All right. See you guys.